How you can work on Trane without being Trane tech. I thought they locked up their software to the point you couldn't do anything without paying them a bunch for a laptop guy. Um, so there's a lot you can do without having to run through the software, especially if you have access to the lid menu, the LLID menu, which is binding, which is the main reason, in my opinion, you really need the software at this point. Like, in my experience with Trane chillers, almost all the troubleshooting we need to do on a routine. Now, we get off into the weeds on different stuff, okay? So there are circumstances, but the vast majority of it we can do if we understand the chiller well enough, okay? So there's our big caveat. We have to know the machine. But we can do these things without needing the software. Now, something we can't do is bindings. We have a bad sensor. We need to go through the binding process. Trane has gotten so much pushback on this that they did build in a option to do that in through the control panel. But that option does have there is an ability to turn that off to where you can't access it. So if they did that, then the laptop software is literally all you have. Now, if you can build a relationship with the right person, and I have found that comes back to having a salesman or somebody inside of Trane that you do a lot of work with, and you can build a relationship with your local Trane office, you might find somebody who's willing to license you a copy of the TU software. You can download it for free from their website. You can have the software for free, but it's useless if you don't have an active subscription. And it's a little bit of a process to get that subscription because you have to get the computer ID number, send that to them, and then they generate a serial code based off of that ID that they have to then send back to you. And it's only good for that one device. And if you have to change devices, well, then if you have still an existing like if the laptop crashes for some reason, well, then you have to reach back out to that person, and then you have to have them resubmit a code. And there is a way. You just have to have somebody from Trane willing to sell that to you. And it's not cheap either. It's cheaper than having them show up and do it themselves. If you have to do it enough times, absolutely. And that is, so I could get off on a tangent as to my thoughts on this as a whole. And I think the manufacturers are doing them a disservice by going this path. But without ranting here, unless you're needing to replace the sensor or unless you're commissioning the chiller, you can do vast majority of everything you need to do on a routine. And if you have access to the binding screen through the display, you don't even there's very little you'll actually need them to show up and plug in with a laptop for. Very little, in my opinion. Now there are some people, and I've seen where Trane techs, they're very dependent on the laptop software, and they're trained to really utilize that software heavily, and that's fine if you choose to work that way. It does display the data in a very efficient manner, right? So there may be, if you're used to just looking at the data through that format, then not using it could be very cumbersome, but the data you need to troubleshoot is still present in the display without any special accesses or anything like that. It's just the default display. It just means knowing what to look at and getting comfortable toggling through the screens efficiently. That's really the challenge that you've got at that stage. Try to make friends with somebody at Trane to get the TU software. Do the best you can there. And you can still do a lot of the work you need to do. You can still troubleshoot. You can still diagnose a lot of stuff. You do still have some manual controls. Not all manual controls are locked out just because you don't have the laptop. Now, there are more manual controls inside of the software on the laptop. You can do more in there if you needed to, but most of the time, if you know how to manipulate the chiller, which I know that's a caveat to what I keep saying, you have to understand the machine. That's going to be something, no matter what you do, you could have 100% access to everything and it'd all be free, like we had with TechView, right? TechView was completely free, completely open. But if you don't understand the machine, it doesn't do you much good anyway. So I think the bigger issue is understanding our equipment effectively and knowing how to work on that machine and just how it functions is far more important than necessarily the software itself. Now you could throw in examples like a turbo core. So if you don't have SMT and the access with turbo core, well, you are kind of screwed there, right? That is a good counter argument to what I'm saying. It's hard to work on a turbo core without the software. It is, but I don't think that is true for a CVH. It's not that. It's not the same. I'll just say it that way. So long term, I do think these manufacturers are going to have trouble because of this type of stuff. And the manufacturers who don't require this, like Daikin, like Dunham Bush, two examples, they're going to really have, and I've already seen this, they become the premium choice strictly because their machine is more open to work on. And the companies that they're buying the equipment from majority of the time are letting them know, hey, we don't like that machine because we can't work on it. And your service bill now significantly increased because we have to call them out to hook up, plug in, do whatever. We can't do it ourselves anymore. The more they do that, the less customers are going to want to work with them. And that's been my experience. That's not even my opinion. That is my experience. They've been on this road for some time. I think eventually the markets will pressure them into figuring other things out. I think the fact that the binding screen exists is an example of that. I know York has gotten a lot of pushback for their access manager, and Carrier has gotten some pushback for their stuff as well. And we have seen some software revision updates that have kind of relaxed some of these things a little bit because they got so much pushback. I think it's ridiculous that York is charging people a subscription basically for having access to like the back end of the software to service the chiller side. So if you have the access manager tool and you're a technician who has had you have to, like for the YK, you have to be within 3 years of your last certification. So you have to pay for recertification routinely. And then for every chiller you have in your profile that you are working with the property on, you've got to pay additional fees to have that in your profile and stuff, right? It's completely ridiculous. Give it time. I think this will change. It's going to take time. They're going to have to feel it. And I could spend the next 2 hours breaking down my thoughts on this whole topic. If you're not already in Chiller Academy, I'd really encourage you to go check it out. Just think about it, right? This is what I do full time. I've committed. I've stepped out of the field, committed my career to this going forward. This is what I've always wanted to do, and to be able to educate, help others, and grow, and help this industry take steps forward. So chilleracademy.com. I'd love to be able to work with you over there. We've got a community page. All the lessons have a comment section. That's what I spend a lot of my day doing. If I'm not working on the lesson material itself, then I am in the comments and I'm trying to respond to those as fast as I can, in addition to helping you through email and otherwise. So love to be able to work with you. For all of those that are in the academy, y'all are doing some great work out there. Keep it up. I really appreciate the support and the feedback that you've given.